Hi, it's Jan. Welcome back to my shack. Today I'm playing with the Success Celine. Success is not a particularly well-known brand name, but I have found it to be pretty good quality. So I thought today we might have a play with it and I can introduce you to this rather nice little lady. She's a cover stitch. She has what is described as auto tension, but frankly I think it's rather more to be described as preset tension. She has a stitch selector on the side. As you see, I've put a label on the front here so I can remember which one is which. So basically what you do is you select your stitch and then it sets the tensions up for you automatically. You can override them at the front here. As you see, as soon as you choose your stitch, it sets all the tensions back to auto. You can, however, override those tensions if you need to, and it needs to be said that basically these preset tensions are on a default setting for a light to medium weight fabric and usually about a 40 weight thread. So if you go outside those parameters, you might have to do a little bit of tweaking on the tensions here. So let's start with the threading. I shall start with the looper thread. So we take that over the tension arm. There's a clip at the back that the thread clips into, and then a little tiny tension disc beside it. You must make sure when you thread that the foot is up and the foot lift is on the side here. So my foot is up, and once I've taken it through the tension discs, I will give it a tug top and bottom in order to ensure that the thread is where it should be between those tension discs. I'm just going to bring the camera down a little bit so hopefully you'll be able to see more clearly the threading of the looper. And if we zoom in a bit more, there. So we have the little coloured dots, and so I am going to literally hold the thread with my tweezers and then I poke it into place with my finger. This is the way over the years I have found is the easiest way to actually thread one of these beasties. Next one goes from bottom to top. Now this little one at the bottom here, this has a spring underneath. I'll just get hold of it and pull it up. It is important when you put the thread through here that you actually catch that spring, because that puts just a little bit more tension on the thread. I just missed that totally, so should we try that again? Hold it and under. There we go. So can you see, as I pull the thread, that little spring is just pinging up and down. If I zoom in a little bit closer, there, it has that. Can you see that there? That, as I say, puts a little bit extra tension onto your thread, and it's most important that you get the thread under that spring. I'm now going through this little hole here. One of those times when it helps to be ambidextrous. We have, if I just wind this forward a bit, there's a hook in there that I need to take the thread through. All fingers and thumbs today. And then straight through the eye of the looper, like so. Make sure it's tucked into that loop like that. Now we have a little thing here which we pull forwards, and there is a hook there that takes the thread back to the opposite end of the looper. Give it a little tug and make sure that it is safely ensconced in there, and then of course the thread goes straight under the foot, ready to stitch. So now to thread the needles, it doesn't matter which order you do them in. So again, over the tension arm, into the little clip, under, over. There's an extra little hook in there, one there, and when I'm threading my needle, I find if I take the thread in my tweezers, zoom in a bit so you can see what I'm doing, and then I cut the thread at an angle, and I find it is then much easier to put through the eye of the needle, like so. Number 2. We noticed how much easier it is to do this if you've got your tongue sticking out. Through the clip, under the tension, up and over. 1, 2 and 3. Nobody noticed I just chucked the thread on the floor then. I won't tell if you don't. And needle number 1. Trim it, and there we go. Now when I've just threaded a cover stitch machine, I always like to take those threads through the foot. So I turn the flywheel always towards you, and then I just take the screwdriver to bring the threads out from underneath. Then you've got all the threads through the foot and you're ready to go. You'll also notice that this machine is designed with 2 screw holes on the top, and that means you can take any industrial attachments and they will fit onto the front bed of the machine like so. You have forwards and backwards alignment on this little piece here, and you've got sideways alignment on the cover stitch table. So this is actually a bias binder, so you can put neck bands and all sorts on using the industrial attachments and those set of screw holes. So now we're going to have a look at how this Celine stitches. I'll be honest, when I first met her I thought she was rather noisy, but having seen how well she behaves, I've changed my mind rather considerably on that. Let me just show you where the controls are. We've already spoken of the stitch selector. That's up here. That's the one that you use to set up your preset tensions. The next one down is the stitch length. It goes from 1 to 5 millimeters, and the next one down is the differential feed, and that is exactly the same as the one on your overlocker. So basically it controls the speed of the front feed dog, and thereby gives you the opportunity to control the way that your fabric moves through the machine. So I have that set on N, my stitch length at 3, and on the left hand side I have something that I have to say very, very carefully. It is the pressure foot presser. Shall I try that again? It's the presser foot pressure. That's better. And basically, to be honest, I've never had to adjust it for finer fabrics, but I did find with 1 or 2 really heavyweight fabrics I had to lighten that pressure just a little bit. So as I say, to begin with I found it a bit noisy, but I've forgiven Celine for that now. So here we have our basic cover hem, quite easy to steer. When I reach the end, raise the foot, turn the wheel forwards until it is sealed, and then I just get hold of the thread and turn it backwards. That releases those threads, and you then need to just make sure that it's not pulling the looper thread out. So there is my cover stitch. As you can see, absolutely spot on, perfect. On the other side you've got the triple needles. Now the other thing I can do, if I just take a piece of lightweight cotton, by the way, always make sure when you finish that your threads are hanging over the end of the table. If you cut these too short, as soon as the needle threads get wrapped around the looper, you'll find that they unthread themselves. So make sure that you've got a good length of thread there. So what I'm going to do this time is put my stitch length to 4 or 5 and put my differential feed to 2. And there, because I've set it to 2, you see the feed dogs are going twice as fast as the back ones. Thank you. And there you have the effect of the differential feed used to gather the fabric. So this time I'm going to do a wide cover stitch so I can show you how to do a hem. To do that, we remove the center needle. I like to use a wide cover stitch mainly because you have to be less accurate than if you're actually doing a narrow hem. You notice I left the thread in the needle before removing it. That way I know that if I do drop the needle, it's still swinging on the thread and not disappearing into the body of the machine. So here we have it set up for a wide cover stitch. I put my stitch selector now to H. Because I'm working with a sweatshirt fabric, I'm going to put my stitch length to just above 4. Always make sure, incidentally, that your threads come at least to the edge of this table. Because those needle threads wrap around the looper, if you have it too short, if that thread is too short, you'll find that it will unthread itself from the needles as you start to stitch. So always with cover stitch, your fabric needs to be under the needles. You do have an extra lift on the foot if you need it for these thicker fabrics. And just make sure I put the foot down now. I have got the needle positions are marked on the front of the foot. So if I was doing a cover stitch hem, I could just make sure I can feel where the edge of the fabric is, so I would just make sure that it was lining up with that leftmost needle. Now if you're stitching in the round, you stop with the needles down, you raise the foot and you pull these threads through to the front like so, and then you take the needles out, and hanging on to these threads you pull the fabric sideways to get it out from under the feet. Here we go. And then get hold of these threads and just pull them out to the side. I'll sort that out in a minute. Now what you have here is 5 threads underneath, because the 2 needle threads have wrapped themselves around the looper. So I cut this off to the edge of the table and just pull sideways, and those top threads are now pulling through underneath. There we go, so they've all come through to the underneath, and I can tie them off from there. So there is my wide cover stitch, and as you see, nice and neat on the wrong side. So now to achieve the chain stitch, I need to work on just the middle needle. So I'm going to remove the left one and move the right one over to the center. Now if you struggle to get the needles in, you'll note that there are grooves in the foot at the bottom, and I find if I lower the tip into the central groove, it makes it much easier to locate the hole when you take the needle upwards. So that's the center needle in. Now I just need to put the thread back in. Chain stitch is a great, oh sorry, should do that with the foot up. Chain stitch is a great stitch for basting. So if you've got something that you want to try on first, then use your chain stitch on your cover stitch machine with a long stitch length, and once you've tried it on, if you need to unpick it, it's a fairly simple job to locate the bit to the bit to pull, and then it will unravel quite easily. So that's the thread slid through. My stitch selector is now on D. My stitch length at 3, because I'm working with a fairly thin fabric. And you must have the fabric under the foot. Stitch length 3, differential feed on N. Incidentally, you can do that with these machines. With the foot up, it will still work, and that makes it easier to take it out. And then once you've finished, if you wind the arm backwards, it unravels those 2 threads, so you're ready for the next bit of stitching. So there is my chain stitch, and over the other side it looks just like an ordinary straight stitch. And that's what you will see in industrially made garments next to an overlock stitch, and that is then what is called a safety seam. So to cover what I've done, for the price that this machine is sold at, it's a little cracker. Yes, it's a little noisy, but quite frankly, it has behaved itself impeccably today. So this little Celine I'm really quite impressed with. I hope you've enjoyed watching.